Yeah, so actually the 4 years of physio I had were the most challenging and most transformative years in my whole life. Being a video gamer, introverted, taking my clothes off, like
I know. This is your fortnightly instalment where I interview a trailblazing physiotherapist that has shaped the profession we are today. In celebrating their journey, knowledge and insights, you gain the opportunity to plan and guide your own professional journey. My name is Doug Carey and welcome to Physio Plus 10. Welcome new and past listeners to Physio Plus 10. Our special guest today is Barry Nguyen. Welcome, Barry.
thank you, Doug. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Normally start the podcast to get a bit of a background. So we sort of go right back to influential stuff like schooling. So where you grew up and what your early schooling entailed.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Melbourne. Um, my mum was a boat person from Vietnam, and my dad was a scholar on a government scholarship here as an engineer, and my mum was a machine worker when manufacturing was big back then. I was brought up in the sticks, so Knox,
Yeah.
which is outer southeastern suburbs, um, in a pretty much a middle class family, maybe towards even the lower end when we started in Australia with nothing. And I guess education was a big part of social mobility for um, our background, given that my both my parents were immigrants. So I guess that's probably built that foundation of my work ethic and my lifelong learning to build skills and value for the community. So
Would you said your mum and dad were therefore very supportive? Like they sort of saw that as a means to move, but they're obviously very supportive even though they didn't go to uni?
my dad did go to
Oh,
uni.
scholar.
Yeah, he was a scholar, but my mum didn't. So my mum escaped by boat.
Yeah.
So interestingly, if you want to bring it back to that, so she came from a business entrepreneurial family in Vietnam. So interestingly, they were wealthy then, so they trade in gold,
Yeah.
to get on one of these boats. But my dad was from a poorer family that was more educated, and he got here being rewarded a scholarship from
Right.
charity or non-for-profit that was funded by the Australian government. So my mum brings in the entrepreneurial side, and then my dad brings in the academic side.
Yeah.
In,
And where do you sort of fit with your siblings?
so my sister is a lawyer, so a criminal defense lawyer. I think that came as a result of dealing with the Vietnamese community as well back then. Um, Not sure completely her full story, which I won't speak here, but she was a bit more privileged than me for various reasons in that she was privately schooled at Wesley College
Yeah.
in in the final years because my parents were worried about where she was going early on. While I was that bookworm, really
You were
awkward nerd.
guaranteed.
So, and I went to Glen Waverley Secondary College, which was a top secondary school, government school in Melbourne. So yeah, that's so she was more extrovert, I was more introverted. I was more mathematical and STEM focused, if you want to say that. And my sister was more humanities and probably has higher EQ than me. Yeah.
And there you were, you ended up in physio, but we won't get quite there yet. So in your early years, looking back, would you say there are any sort of experiences or choices or outcomes that sort of came from your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So my uncle gave me a computer to tinker with as a child. And there I basically do you we're in the time of QBasic. Remember that?
I wouldn't say,
Oh,
I remember going to uni and we were privileged to have one computer, an Apple computer for about, I think, 500 students.
yeah. So we had this really, so my dad worked as an engineer and he brought home this really chunky laptop that was like, it was orange and it's pretty gross. But anyway, I used to play these games on it. and he didn't buy me any games, frankly. So what I had to do was I had to hack into that game,
You were
and then
motivated.
I was motivated in that sense. And he also worked in the automotive industry, which he used to take me to car show every year, and that's probably gave me my fascination for technology, interestingly. Um, and uh, and then the sport part came from my strong interest in racket sports and
Yeah.
soccer really early on. So, and I love that competitive nature about it and the social side. Um, and from a health side, in fact, it was from my parents saying maybe you shouldn't get into engineering because the whole manufacturing industry is collapsing, moving offshore at the time because that's how, that's brought them here and put food
Yeah.
on the table. So maybe you should do something like health, which seems more stable in Australia because it's service based and physio sounded like that kind of up and coming thing around lifestyle. And then but I'll talk to you about that choice. So I chose physio over other things because I looked in the that manual that you get in year 12. So I got a really high score. I did well in the UMAT, which is this aptitude test for the health sciences in Victoria that's needed. And physio had this unit called biomechanics. And I thought, hey, this has got to do with physics. So I was like, wow, it's either this or I don't want to do med, not really, but I did get interviews into med and got shortlisted and actually failed at those interviews because I didn't know what to say in them, being socially awkward and just playing video games pretty much most of my high school. Didn't really care. So then I ended up at physio school and I was like, that's cool at the University of Melbourne in just after BCE in finishing in 2001. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember my first day at university physio walking in, and we had a class of probably about 50, but about 47 of them were females. And that was a little bit of a daunting experience, certainly different from engineering, which was almost the reverse, I guess.
Yeah. So actually the 4 years of physio I had were the most challenging and most transformative years in my whole life.
Yeah.
Being a video gamer, introverted, not many friends like my sister, right? Um, taking my clothes off, like
I know.
it's just, and then everyone around me were mostly jocks, right? So you get a lot of these, Anglo, you know, big bicep, six-pack guys from private schools
Yeah.
versus me, who's this nerdy Asian guy. So I was like, wow, this is very different, right? And I'd say, as I said, on my social skills side, it was lower, and I struggled through the hospital system with the communication, but I made it in the end, and I think that was the best choice to become a physio because it's not so structured. It was heavily involved in communication that I didn't have before that until my final years where I was actually about to quit physio. I was like, this is just way too much. I do not want to be clearing sputum, right? I'm like, what's going on here, right? In the final years. And it's just I didn't really enjoy the hospital kind of environment.
Yeah.
And then, and I just felt, yeah, so I felt a bit like, well, I don't know what to do at this point. And then I had that entrepreneurial seizure with a lot of people. And then I went out just randomly cold calling and emailing random people to find as mentors and reading lots of personal development and business books in that year. In
Yeah.
that year.
So in a way, the physio was just, although it was like the hot experience of a cold plunge, you might say, going socially would have been, I mean, I remember it being pretty challenging, but I guess English is your second language. Was Vietnamese spoken at home or?
Yeah, Vietnamese was spoken at home.
Yeah,
So
so it's your
and
second
what culture,
language and it makes it quite difficult. Communication is pretty sort of difficult.
yeah, it was really interesting that yeah, I did well in a UMAT because it's written.
Yeah.
I had this Aussie slang test that I had to do.
Give me an example.
Like strike, blue murder, or
Yeah.
I actually failed it and had to read. Anyway, that's a funny stuff. But you get my point. So I came into
Yeah, totally,
where
totally.
going, what is going on?
Yeah.
And my parents just said, you got to finish this off. there's like an 100% job rate, Barry. They need you.
Come on,
Blah blah
man.
blah. Come on, But and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this, right? So I was just trying to find that path in the end. So my parents didn't have that business background or anything, and then I actually met certain people in my later stages, which I'll talk about later, that have actually shaped me in that sense
Yeah,
of my parents. So yeah, it was a hard until in the final year I met John Ford, who you've interviewed.
great.
I was like, man, there's light.
Yeah,
The lecturer at Melbourne Uni and who's talking about this commercial thing and how clinical excellence, you can't just be clinically excellent, but you need to be commercially astute. And Michael Kenahan was part of
yes,
Life as well, was part of that. Uh,
interviewed as well.
yep.
Well,
So
actually, Jason, I think Jason Smith too. Like he sort of intersects that sort of clinical competence with the entrepreneurial skill because essentially, I mean, I love it just from the very basics that if you don't market your skills to the people that need you, then how are your skills valuable or won't be utilized? So yeah, to all those sort of young physios out there, so might be thinking, I've got to work on my clinical skills. I agree entirely, but unless you let people know that you've got those clinical skills, then they are next to useless because they won't come seeking them. So I think we've got
absolutely.
to sort of be more aware of that. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough on the new grads. And the new grads are
Uh,
listening. It's tough because you got all these things that coalescing all at the same time. And
yeah.
anyway, I
Yeah. So,
agree. Clinical needs
yeah,
to be there and business skills as well.
absolutely. So I graduated and then I contacted John and he goes, yeah, there's an opportunity in St. Albans where there's a lot of Vietnamese population. Maybe because you can speak Vietnamese, you can start
Yeah.
there. So that was my draw
Work to
card.
your strengths.
Yeah. And I was like, this is all work cover and, compo claims and manual workers. And like, yeah, it was interesting. And I started in a struggle actually. So just to be honest, I was traveling from Glen Waverley to St. Albans just to see one or two patients, right? A week at the start and just built up slowly. And that process in itself, right? Itself was transformative to the point where today I've done over 30,000 consults now. And I'm still a physio. Um, Hopefully a relatively successful one, right? I'm still going. Not deregistered yet.
Yeah,
But
that's a good mark.
yeah, that's good, Mark. So yeah, I've just learned that hard way, like in the trenches. And
Yeah.
then yeah, eventually I started, yeah, my clinic on the side. So what happened there was in the first year, I there was the Yellow Pages book, so back then, and I think it was the first few years where the care plan just came out in GP clinics. That's Medicare. So I was like, oh, that's a big thing in the Asian community. It's like, oh, bulk billing physio, that's cool, you know.
Right. Okay.
So that was, I think, 2006, 2007 when that enhanced primary care plan came in.
Yep.
So then I started just calling GP clinics in my area and then started working there with a bottle of cream and, you know, that portable bed.
So you literally went to several GP clinics
Yeah.
working at the same time.
Yep. Um,
So a lot of
whole,
travel.
a lot of travel, a whole bunch of them. And then I realized there was issues where I wasn't special enough for them to give me a filing cabinet.
Mm, jeez.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just this huge mess of paper records at the time. And then as a result of that, I partnered up with my high school mate, who was a software developer. And then we created a browser-based software system before Clinico was even launched, actually. There wasn't
Yeah.
such thing at the time. To manage myself. And then I actually grew that with my mates to 10 physios. And then we sold out in 1.5 years. And then I have this lot of cash, a little bit of cash. Um, and then I wanted to change paths at the time. Again, that disillusionment came back.
Let's just pause there. When you graduated from Uni of Melbourne as a physio, what was it that you found particularly insightful or that you learned from having done physio as a Vietnamese
Oh, yeah.
son of a refugee family, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a very good question because there's a lot more refugees and or that
Correct.
coming in, and they actually not sure what they're getting themselves into. Actually, it's we thought it was like a health science, the typical one is pharmacy or medicine. Very like culture shock or whatever you want to call it, but it's very different as a physio. The reason for that, I think, is predominantly it's a very touch-based, trust-based profession. And secondly, I think physio in Australia is very well respected compared to some other parts of the world. So there's this challenge around understanding what you do and even knowing what paths there are in there. And often they would actually go in there and then do med or do something else afterwards because there's a lack of awareness in the community of what physios do.
Okay. And this is we're talking about the Vietnamese community, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just think, yeah, so they're very much, I think they're better now, but yeah, back then, very minimal knowledge.
So within the Vietnamese community, you're saying there's a good knowledge of pharmacy and medicine. And I almost think they sound like those two professions lend themselves to people that are academic, but not necessarily conversationally competent or hands-on comfortable.
Correct. Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So where does touch fall within the Vietnamese people? Like when you see your friends, do you give them a hug? Do you touch them on the
Uh,
shoulder?
these are great questions. No, I mean, they show love through generally action. It's not like a European style.
Right.
Um, they show love through action, and often the culture is very different in that sense. So touch doesn't necessarily mean building empathy or building rapport.
Right.
Something I was grappling as, right, as a
Yeah.
undergrad student, like dealing with all these things, having really poor manual handling skills and
Yeah.
having that being socially awkward, etc. It's just all played on
Compounded.
my mind, and I was like, wow, this is just too much. I'm finding this a
Mm.
challenge. But then I pushed through it, and then yeah, what yeah, was pleasantly surprised as a result of that challenge and pain, what came about it for me as a physio from a career.
Yeah. Well, that probably also a life skill too, I'm guessing, if you look at
Absolutely.
it broadly in that sort
Yeah.
of sense. All right. So you graduated, you became a touch therapist for your community.
Well,
And I mean, you really put in some hard yards with all those different medical practices. And I mean, you're getting known. That's a very important thing, but it's a hard way to do it. It's like warming 5 benches of different sports teams. It's time
correct.
consuming. It's a hard yard to get that sort of knowledge. And then you got this bonus of cash, I guess, we'll just sort of say like a little down payment from your clinical notes
Yeah.
business. Did you sell it and get out of it completely, or are you still involved with it?
I actually got out of it completely due to co-founder conflicts as well at the time.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
it's hard sometimes going to business with friends with no contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so young and naive.
Yeah.
We
Well,
had the right idea.
yeah.
So, and that's another lesson for
Yeah,
your,
totally.
if you do that, you risk uh, breaking the friendship. And it's broken now.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's family and friend. It's always
that's
the
the
thing,
way it
isn't it?
is. So it's yeah. So there's a few things going on there, but I think what made me realize was as in like 1 or 2 years out of physio or three, I was probably making more than a senior physio getting paid. And that just opened up my eyes to the whole world of business models and entrepreneurship.
Right.
Like,
So
hang
that's
on,
sort of where we had that
hang on.
overlap between the physio skills and then starting to get back to your clunky old orange computer.
Correct. And then you're
Yeah.
like, okay, so that's not the truth. You know what? The average salary of a physio on the CCAD is not true. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't, but that's what, as an Asian upbringing, from this background, you think, yeah, we just get a stable job, right? Get a
Right.
salary, get annual leave, sick leave, long service leave, or whatever. Yeah, all that stuff. That's awesome, right? And then it made me realize, there's this new truth that I've learned in there that wasn't in my background, that it's important to work on the business, not in the business.
Yeah.
And that the business itself is an asset, the database is an asset, the IP creates an asset. brand you create an asset, and the goodwill. And then I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I think I'm just going to double down in this direction. Um, I don't if it's for career progression, I'm going to have to make it out of this career. It's not like a structured career like in medicine where you go from intern to specialist or
Correct.
surgeon making, $1 million a year, right? Where it's
Yeah.
pretty stable. But the problem I found with that was there's no change. Like if you choose that path, I could have chosen medicine in that. I wouldn't be able to get out of it. And I can see that in my friends. And a lot of them have mental health issues as a result of that. You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't
Yeah.
really pursue their potential interest. And that's system based, right? Like, I mean, you've been training to do these surgeries for 15 years. You're earning large amounts of money relative to the norm. You've got this mortgage in, Turak, right? You're not going to pull out of that, right? It's going to do a startup, right? You're not going to
You're
code a
talking to the
startup.
wrong guy here, mate. I made that decision a
Oh,
long
you made
time
that.
ago. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So basically,
Yep.
you wanted to have that flexibility. You saw there was another pathway to go down with regards to your computer experience.
Yes.
Is that what you put your money towards? Is that when you said
Yes.
it?
Yep.
So what did you do?
Okay, so there's a few elements I hope everyone can realize here too, as your viewers. So, physio as a profession is not scalable, as in you can only charge them an X amount of money. You can only see a
Yeah.
certain.
So for new grads, what you're sort of saying is that you can only really work 8 hours a day. You can only see, X number of patients. Say if it's a half hour, you've got a maximal. And if you sort of, 8 times 2 is 16, but if you're doing 16 over 5 days a week, it's only
Yeah,
going to be a couple of years and you'll be burnt out. So
yeah,
you just can't keep that up either.
no, no, and I think it's really important to take that lesson. And I
Mm.
did that myself. I was doing 100, like, oh, this is good money, right? My hourly rate's good. Can't do that forever, right? It's not possible. So it's not scalable. And if you're not a HR type of person, you're not going to build a 10 full-time physio business very easily and then manage that. And then you realize the profit margins in that is, your ability to grow your practitioners. Because the demand for the services are probably there. And that changes the whole challenge. So dealing with 10 physios, I think is risky for me at the time. And then I thought, okay, so there's only two things that scale where the costs don't increase as a business model, I've realized at that point. And it was to either be a content producer, so selling courses or something like that, where you can get more users or customers or consumers and not increase the cost. It's relative fixed or software. So they're the two things where you can potentially get this growth. And then, yeah, and then I met a lot of people as a result of that. And I realized the valuations from these companies are a lot greater because you get these subscriptions. And then you either sell a physio business after 10 years for X amount or build a subscription base where there's annuity, where the valuations 10 to 15x what you created originally. So
Yeah.
if
So what you're
and
saying is that to scale a physio practice, you literally have to bring in more physios. But as we know, the biggest cost of a business really is almost your wage. So that's not a very easily scalable type process.
so I was in
I guess you can teach courses, which is like what I've gone down, where you sort of, there's one person teaching, 15, 20 people. And you're saying the third one really is the software, and that's the direction you decided to
yeah,
choose.
absolutely. Correct. So you can get bigger. And then if you see things from that perspective, then you realize, okay, if it's for the money or time, then you might need to rethink about what you're doing. Um, if it's for, like a growing family where you want flexibility, then you have to rethink again what you want to do. Um, but it's important to understand, I think, as a physio, from my perspective, is you can earn as much money as you like. Don't think that, don't go looking, what's the highest paid health profession? I don't think physio will come up there at
No,
all.
definitely does not.
But I think we did come up as number one or something like that, up the top in America for highest job satisfaction, which is
Yeah.
great, right?
And I think that's true.
Yeah.
That's definitely true.
But what I'm trying to say there is, yeah, like it's important that you have the right mentors who have been there, done that as well, and just have a
Yeah.
chat during your career, and they change over time, and they might not be your friendship group that you came out with, to physio. You graduated from physio with. It might be a Jason Smith who's, sold out of a massive eight-figure business, I think. Yeah. So you just need to look at things from a different angle, and then you'll get answers from that, whether you want to continue on after 10 years, like a 10 plus year thing, or not. And I've decided to continue on, and I think it's been very satisfying as a physio. Um, Particularly when you can merge it with different learnings you have from seemingly unrelated uh
Yeah.
professions, which is even bigger. That's when you make the biggest impact, because that's where you find your place, right? Um,
Yeah.
who's how many socially awkward, non-people orientated physios do you get in the profession after 10 years? Is is a question, you know what I mean? And who's going to bring
We don't have that data. But I know that also when people who have maybe physio is either their base or they have another profession which is the base, and they bring in either something else like computer, or they might be an anatomist, or they might be crossing over into it from ballet and dance. These types of practitioners, they almost bring their existing understanding data set and they say, look, these two things could be merged together to build a better profession. And I think, looking at a lot of the leaders, past and present in the physio profession, they have often gone out and done something quite separate or in a parallel universe and brought that content back into the profession, and so enriched our profession by bringing that into it. And I guess yours is that classic example where you've got another passion. Mine's sleep. I've gone out there and spent sort of 9 years doing research in sleep. And I look at it and I think, my God, this is basic. This should be undergraduate stuff. Like if you don't sleep well, every human system is suboptimal, including longevity. So why aren't we including this with everything that we do? Because if you're rehabbing that sports guy, he won't rehab that well because he's not sleeping properly, or that lady going through menopause, she won't do very well if she doesn't get better sleep. So tell
Yeah.
us about your stuff, computers. We've jumped around a bit,
Yeah.
but you've decided to keep working as a physio, so you are
Yep.
part-time.
Part-time.
But I know you went into private practice pretty early on when you first
Yeah.
graduated.
Okay.
So for new physios, they're all often looking at their boss and going, oh, he's earning this amount, and I'm only earning this amount. What did you learn about going from being an employee to being an employer?
Okay. So this is yeah, a misconception. You think so you might get 40, 50% approximately, right, of takings. And you're like, my boss is making 50% of
And
that.
he's doing nothing. She's doing
Doing
nothing.
absolutely nothing. I'm slaving away, seeing 60 patients a week. I don't get to have my pub night on Friday because my boss somehow roped me into doing every second Saturday or more, right? Per week. I realize it's actually not that straightforward, guys. The profit margins are actually not there in that sense. And it's a hard slog for the business owner to even be sustainable. And I think when I look back now, taking that 40, 50% actually reduces your cognitive load to pursue your passions like sleep, software, or whatever it is. And you get that flexibility. So I don't look up to these people who do that. And I'm like, hats off to them that they want to do that for many years. But it is not what you think it is. And my tip around that is to like get as much experience as you can. Learn from these people. If you don't, as many of people you look up to, and having a hospital stint, even though it pays less, is a good idea because
Mm.
you often get a better team environment where you can learn more skills that you might not learn in a smaller private practice. So I think that's something, if on reflection, I might have done if I had a clearer plan. Um,
I
find
was
it.
going to ask you that. Like some physios, they come on and they're very deliberate. They graduate and there's A, there's B, there's C, and there's this mentor I want to hook up with, and they have a plan very specific. I was totally the opposite. I was just bohemian, travel, Tassie, Canada, States, South America, and I went nowhere literally. But I got lots of experiences. What were you? Were you a directed person or were you a bohemian?
I mean, as I said, I was running from to life care in St. Albans, treating a lot of patients who couldn't speak English properly under work cover with John Ford. And then next minute, I was, trying to build a practice in Wheelers Hill near my house in Glen Waverley.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I worked at the local gym there because I wanted equipment. And then I was just jumping around like crazy and wasn't making much money at the time. But
So what was the light bulb moment? When did you make a decision like this is just not, I can't keep doing this? Like what happened?
when you have responsibilities like marriage, kids, and there's other things that you need to stabilize in your life, then you can't jump around like that. Having said that, I'd encourage you to jump around like that if you're younger, like yourself at the time. Better to be behemoth, or you never get a chance to do that because that's going to bring new learnings and experiences and define your career moving forward. Um, I do strongly feel that you should look back in your childhood as well and what you're interested in. And the earlier it is, the probably more likely you find what your passion is there. But the later in your career where you have all these responsibilities, you might be fixated into certain things where you can't take risks and dabble, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah.
It's the dabbling is really important. Like that being that generalist approach rather than going, I want to be, an AFL sports physio. I'm just going to do this path early on. I don't think that's a great idea. It might be for some people, but you also need to verify that whether that is actually your interest
Yeah. Or your
by
passion.
dabbling, yeah, or your
Yeah.
passion. And often I find, yeah, that common intention initially for physio doesn't result in that
Yeah.
towards mid-career when they're doing something completely different that they probably didn't even expect when they first chose physio in the first
Yeah.
place.
No, I think that's true. And I think those, the podcast is called Physio Plus 10 for a reason because we're looking at physios that have gone 10, 15, 20, 30 years into their career. And probably a common theme that I would say comes back is make sure you don't get stuck in a groove. Make sure you continue reevaluating what you do and what you're wanting to do. And probably underline that is, yeah, don't get hooked into just one thing like I need the money. Because if you get to that inflexibility, probably that's like what you're saying with your med friends. They've got the money coming in, but they've realized it's not their passion. It's not what's driving them. And money at the end of the day, it's nice, but it doesn't make you happy.
Doesn't. And that's a really important um, lesson to learn that down the track 10 plus years for a doctor, you'll be surprised how many of them are actually that happy in what they do. But
Mm.
yeah, so
Yeah. So we'll come back to the software. I guess you're sort of working out that you can scale through software. You've had a good toe in the hole. You've sort of started off, you've sold your first thing, you got your first suitcase of cash. What was the next thing that you thought you needed to do to become, I don't know, as you say, it's not a structured career pathway in software. So did you look to certain people or did you take a particular course or did you just chip away at it and work out something was needed?
okay, so I was involved in the tech startup scene. So where people hack together products. You might have heard of Y Combinator.
No,
Um, so
I'm
Y
not in that
Combinator,
tech.
I'm not in the tech. I met a lot of people, like one of the founders, it's one of my business partners now, actually, Marcus Tan, who runs Health Engine from Perth.
Okay, yep, we've come across that.
GP, yeah. So he's a GP, and then he raised $80 million for that startup, coming from a doctor,
Right.
yeah, from Perth, actually.
Yeah.
But what I learned there was, okay, I'm not a coder, but I probably need to learn something about this in some way because I think the great thing with software, it's not like a hardware type of situation where you can't iterate on it. with software, you can change it
Yeah.
very quickly, which is conducive of a low cost experiment, which is essentially what a startup is. So, and I was a bit annoyed at myself. I was like, hang on, maybe I should have learned how to code and build these things earlier. Um, because now I'm going to find a co-founder, got PTSD right after friendship groups breaking up as a result of that. It's not that simple to do that, to get someone with the same passion and vision with like you to build it up. So I was always toying with that idea of maybe learning how to code, but then there was this limiting belief where in there's Silicon Valley shows that they're all young and what I mean, like code that didn't well with me. That
You must have been young at this stage still, surely.
still young. I should yeah, but I
You
think
weren't 17.
I wasn't 17 and I think I was very busy as a physio. So this
Yeah.
is the issue. And I probably should have taken a step back then. But then I got involved in digital health consulting and advising as a result of that. And then I was the first APA digital health advisor, helping them out do the practice management software stock take, which is
Yep.
still available on Google. And that was when it has opened my doors to experts in the area, as well as physios that were open to engaging technologies. And as a result of that, I started a master's in computer science just for fun, dabble.
Were you coding at this stage as well, or you sort of put that on the back burner? Yeah.
Back. And that was at as a remote uh, course at Edith Cowan University, which is a Perth one.
It is.
Yeah,
You might as well come and live over here, mate.
I know. Most of my contacts are there. No. Uh,
Okay, so you're doing a master's in computer science, and what did that basically give you?
okay, so my first unit there was programming.
Oh God, here we go.
Okay. And it was Python programming. And then I actually did it and got 94% in it. And I was like, whoa, I'm actually pretty good at coding. And then the most hilarious thing about that course was we actually coded by written exams. Like we had to, and I was like, this is just not right. This is bull, right?
Yeah,
Like, what kind of learning style is this?
yeah.
I changed it. So what happened there was I was like, no, I'm just going to quit this course. I did it again on the move, dabble. Um, I stopped that course and then I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. This is just ridiculous. I'm not going to get anything practical out of this. I want to learn these things to, do build practical things that are useful. So then COVID hit around that time. Um, and my business, do you remember the Melbourne extended famous
Yeah,
lockdown?
it was the worst, the
Had to
worst in the country.
stop, I think, for 10 months or something like that. And I was like,
Mm,
oh my God, this is completely stuffed. I've got like two young kids, third one afterwards, but it was just ridiculous. I was like,
too
oh
long
man,
in COVID.
I'm done, right? This is ridiculous. My clients expect me to put my hands on them, right?
Yeah,
That's the irony, right? From where I started as a physio.
yeah,
What am I going to do now? Like, I can't just give them stretches and exercises, right? And give them advice. And being a digital advocate, I wasn't actually that big on the telehealth delivery method for my business.
yeah.
I didn't get it. That's the hilarious thing. I got it for certain things, but not for me. Tried that for a bit and that didn't work out. My clients probably went somewhere else. Um, and then I was like, oh God, this is completely stuffed. And the great thing at that point was they couldn't get software engineers into the country. So then there's boot camps started popping up, 5 months and then guarantee a software engineering job afterwards.
All right.
So in that time, I joined a full-time boot camp. I finished it, got a job in an ASX listed $300 million company in software as a service in HR. And I've been a software engineer for 3 years now, almost.
Okay. So what does a software engineer do? Like,
Okay. Um, so there's a software developer who basically develop software. I mean, the words can be used interchangeably, but software engineering essentially is problem solving. So developing systems, maintaining systems, and testing systems, writing tests for systems, debugging, creating new features. Yeah, essentially creating software.
you're
And
now full into programming then.
yeah. So I actually got a job as a software engineer. I'm still a software engineer.
Yeah.
full time. I still worked as a physio part time to learn those skills practically.
Yeah.
So I did the course, but I was like, no, I'm not good enough. So I'm just going to get in as a junior. And interestingly, it probably pays as much as a junior as a senior physio,
Yeah.
which is
Well, that's the thing. Like across
yeah,
professions, I can
yeah,
say, yeah. Mining's the same over here. You can have, literally a mid-20s-year-old that's earning 150, 180,
yeah,
$200,000.
absolutely.
And, most private practitioners owning their own practice would be really happy to be earning that 20
Yeah,
years out.
and
So,
this is real data, right? This is from someone who's been there. So I was like, this is a fully remote job, so flexible. It's I can do. Yeah, I just I get the work done. I don't need to talk to anyone. Do you know what I'm saying? I think I found my
oh, you're
place.
falling back into old ways there.
Yeah, but then I was like, oh no, I miss physio.
Yeah.
I don't talk to people anymore. I just talk to the computer. And there's 15-minute stand-ups each day. But what I mean, there's a lot of insights there that I can relate and can give advice to others considering these professions. Very
Yeah.
different. The grass is never greener, right? On the other side. I actually prefer physio in many ways,
Yeah.
but that's another story there. Having said that, in that period, I learned how to professionally build software. And then Cliniscribe, right, came out from that because ChatGPT came out about a year and a half ago. And I was like, wow, this AI thing is going to be big and it's going to change the world. It's like an internet. Is when those internet.com boom, happened. And I fell for that trap. And then I jumped into that, hacked together my own app. Use I did it for myself, solved my own problem, like what you did with the exercise video. But I solved
Yeah,
it
that's
because I
well,
like,
that's
frankly,
that's the best one. Like, again, I'm not sure. It was 2015 or 2017. I was saying, I was doing the stick figures, and you sort of said when you moved into private practice, you're doing yellow
yes,
pages, they don't exist. You're
it
writing notes, that doesn't exist. You're
doesn't
doing
exist.
stick
Yeah.
figures, that really doesn't exist. So that's how it's moved. And I was doing the same thing, stick figures.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is crazy. Smartphones are out. People got a smartphone. Why don't I just have a program where I can video them? I don't want a database of all these exercises because everyone's different. I like to have it just slightly personalized to that particular person and scalable so they can change what they need to do. Best way to do it is say, do your exercise, video it, put the 5 or 6 together, and then email it to them. And so, yeah, it was called video exercises with a capital X in the middle. And I just sort of thought, I'll do some. I got the name, I registered, and it was really funny because then I went data search. I typed into Google video exercises, and I kept on coming up with all these porn sites. It was all XXXX. Oh my God, I made a big mistake here. This is not the name. It
Love
makes
it.
sense to me, but not for searching it.
I might have to revive it, mate.
Well, I still think the
Anyway,
concept
yeah,
simplicity, but as I was sort of saying to you before, the problem is that the UI keeps changing, and Apple, get paid 30%, and
yeah,
you really
absolutely.
need big sales to sort of cover that developer's cost if you can't tweak it yourself. Because I was having to email back to my development programmer in China, and yeah, it just was ongoing, and it was great idea, but obviously the practicality
Yeah,
of
and
generating it not
and
working.
essentially that's what software engineers do. Like they get paid
Yeah,
to do this, and it's very hard. It's not like they, wave a magic wand. You know it yourself. You know that process now.
yeah, it's
And I
not easy.
realized
Like
when I was paying people to do that, I'd always get the wrong requirements, and then
yes,
it cost me 3 to 6 times more.
yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying? I was like, no, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to hack together something useful, and I'm
yes,
costing more than what I tried to hack in the first place.
yeah.
So I thought this
Well,
would be
it's a good
useful to
experience.
have. And then, so like me, I hate writing letters to GPs because
Yeah,
we don't get paid for them. I'm not so good with the paperwork, horrible. Um, so as a result of that, I was just playing around with ChatGPT one night, and I was like, "Hey, this can solve this problem. It can create treatment plans for my patients. It can do all sorts of these things. Let's make it localized so it's data privacy and security compliant." And I'm going to use my coding skills to hack something together and just show some of my physio mates, "Well, what do you think?" And then as a result of that, yeah, that took off, and that's how I started that
yeah,
mini scribe, which yeah became a Pitch Fest finalist last year, and we've got things that's now use computer vision to actually pull out faxes and up update patient records, create new ones, and reconcile things like that. So it's more than just a chat GPT type of wrapper. And yeah, I think I found my place. So we're getting like, yeah, quite a bit of publicity there with the AP and the rest of it. And I'm getting people expressing interest in my product every single day organically with no marketing.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Yeah.
So I guess with AI being such a topical thing, where do you see it interfacing with the physio profession?
Okay. All right. So this is coming from just to give context. I'm in private practice. I see often patients every 20 minutes. So every 5 minutes matters to me. It can jump to it can work into my lunch break. I need to write these letters or I'm going to get a Medicare audit, right, and pay back certain things. That's my life. I don't want negative reviews, right? So I'm going to make sure my communication's good, treatment plans, etc. So where I think this will go, smart physios or early adopters will be very, very leveraged if they know how to use these tools, not build them like me, right? I think where it's going is these AI tools. There's a Stanford research study recently that came out that have shown that some of these AI technologies can do tasks equally as good or even better than humans. Tasks. I didn't say roles, I said tasks, right? So you're not going to get your job taken over anytime soon.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
whole so yeah. So I strongly feel that physios need to learn about how to learn about these tools in the market so that they can actually reduce their cognitive load so they're not context switching, which I think is terrible. Um,
Give me an
it's-
example with that. What do you mean by
so
context
like
switching?
jumping from a patient, then doing a letter, and then seeing a
Ah,
patient with a letter, and then
yeah.
all and
So
talking to.
their strength is in treating and communicating with that
Absolutely
patient.
correct.
But what they could perhaps improve on is the wraparound stuff, the letter back to the GP, the treatment management plan, the video home program of exercises, that
Correct.
sort of stuff.
Yeah. So they should not be. In an ideal world, I mean, you're a specialist physio. I'm not, but I don't think they should be doing any of that stuff, and it shouldn't impact the quality or experience of the consult or their workflow.
Yeah. So it's almost like having a brilliant personal assistant
Yeah.
or physio assistant that you assess, diagnose, work out the clinical reason. You use all that cognitive brain power, and then you just blink at your personal assistant, and then they do all the treatment.
And I use this analogy a lot. It's like, the specialists who have all these nurses and
Yeah.
admin staff to support them so they don't have that cognitive load or context switching issue.
Yeah.
It
It's
allows
almost a
them.
leveraging like we were talking about before, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what I'm saying? And then that's going to get more advanced over time. But it's important that us physios actually get involved in that earlier. And I think we're very well positioned in that, given the nature and risk of our profession compared to some others. Does it make sense? There's less moving parts and variables to deal with.
Okay. So again, give me an example where you can see that practically working in your private practice.
Yeah. So an example is transcription. So where the technology records the full consult and writes notes for you.
Ah, okay.
That doesn't work for everything, because you don't want to be forced to talk about your physical tests and results, in the consult sometimes too, as a
Yeah.
muscle. Yeah.
The results in my favor was a 45-degree, but there's almost like, yeah, you're talking to that
I
dictaphone
don't
thing
do
again.
PA, you know what I mean? I'm at R1, R2. I don't even know if they still use that. But yeah, anyway, my whole point is I know there's companies out there that do that compete against mine. I don't agree with that, at
Yeah.
least for my style of practice. I believe in dictation, so post-consult dictation, where you quickly talk. The AI knows who you are and then writes a soap note for you, so it doesn't impact the actual normal flow of the consult.
Yeah.
I think that's a starting point until we actually get more understanding of our.
It is a skill though. Like I know when I've done dictation, it takes effort to know how to dictate clearly and articulately and organize your thoughts in that way. But we won't go there.
But on that point, you don't have to organize your thoughts with my system. Like you can
Okay.
actually jumble it and it will actually organize it for you.
Well, there you go. So that's a huge
That's one example.
improvement. Yeah. I guess another practical question that comes to my mind at the moment is that a lot of practices already have a financial package, zero, mild, whatever. And then they have another package, which might be Cliniko, Nucal, front desk, a whole bunch of other practice management softwares, which is basically, a calendar, some degree of financial staff, and usually some sort of program note-wise, and perhaps a marketing bolt in as well. Do you see, and we'll take, CleanScribe as an example, do you see that you need to go to these established people and say, what do you think about integrating this with what you got? Or do you see it as completely separate? How do you see that panning out in the
This
next
is a
few years?
very interesting point. So I strongly feel if your clients are asking you to integrate, that's great. But if your product can survive the test of times, right, and don't need integration because it solves their problem, then I'd actually go for that and double down on your time on that. Does it make sense? The reason for that is if it's a standalone tool and they're willing to use this separate app because it saves them that much time and increases their productivity and patient experience,
Yeah.
then you're solving a very big problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But if it goes down to the point where they're like this and that I need more features, then I actually think your product's lower value on that spectrum. An example of this is where I've seen some companies like Airbnb and Google. When you see it initially, it looked really ugly and crap, but people had no choice but to use it because the pain, you know what I mean, of doing that is, is hot.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
Yeah.
But I'm just so desperate for a bloody solution. There's nothing out there. I'm willing to pay you, Doug, for your exercise app, whatever amount, right?
Yeah. Just to
To
solve
do it.
my pain pressure point.
Yeah. And I think we're at that stage in the AI cycle now that it's not 100%, but if it solves 80% of the person's problems without an integration,
Yeah.
then I think we're onto something.
Yeah.
But integration is absolutely critical because they're essentially the clinical data source of truth, like Nucal or Cliniko, etc.
Yeah.
So people do want that, and we've already integrated with Cliniko as well. But that's beside the point. But I was just saying that a great product should be able to stand alone
Yeah.
on its own.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's, yeah, we'll leave that at
Yes.
that point. That ideally it will stand alone, and I guess that's what you'll continue to drive and develop over the next few years. We mentioned Jason a bit earlier on, and Jason was on the podcast a few guests previously, but he did have a little thing that he liked to talk about with finding your passion. But I also like it for sort of a life question type thing at this sort of point. So it was like, what makes you mad? What makes you sad? And what makes you glad in regards to where you're at with your professions? And we'll put two professions there.
Okay, for both software engineering and physio, what makes me mad? I hate doing repetitive things
Yeah.
that don't add value. They should be automated.
Yeah.
What makes me sad? That I think a lot of these solutions, the technology already exists. However, no one's built it or no one's shown me that this exists for me. What makes me glad? I think seeing everyone in the world, including physios, just peak at what they do and explore their human potential in this world in a creative sense and in a very human sense. I think we've become so used to, doing typing and office jobs, which is knowledge-based work, which I don't know if even humans, like, I haven't thought about this much further, but even humans are meant to do that, whether we've actually created that problem ourselves.
Yeah. That's
Gone away.
interesting.
You know what I'm saying? Interestingly, the knowledge workers are, beware, they're going to lose their jobs first before the physical high touch professions. in
Yeah.
this era.
Well, I mean, an example would be just with lawyers to say, I want a contract that sort of for employing a person on a contractor basis, and you go to ChatGPT and throw
That's
in a
an
few
example.
more specifications, and all of a sudden you got a legal contract which basically ticks all those boxes, and you don't have to go and pay that $1,000 to get a
Yeah,
pro
absolutely.
forma. Because I mean, essentially, a lot of that stuff is pro forma. They just punched off their database as well.
Yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, the point there.
So what's the hardest lesson you'd say you've learned? We've heard a couple as a physio. What is there anything that particularly stands out for you that you've learned from being physio or software engineer?
The learning never stops. I
Yeah,
literally mean that.
but that's good.
It never, like, actually, you think you're done
Yeah,
after probably specialty training like yourself,
no,
and that's something that you have to grapple with if you want to be, useful and responsible. I think as a physio, and but and competitive in a very fast moving world where information is available everywhere, including and ChatGPT will only get more accurate, not
yeah.
less accurate. So
Well, that brings up two things. One is that the flip side of that is that it should ease your mind to think just because I don't know that now, that's not a problem. Like you're never going to know everything. So therefore, the logical flip of that is that as long as you're happy to commit to continual learning, that's all you can do.
absolutely, you shouldn't be paranoid about.
Great. Don't have the stress of it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
shouldn't. You should be in that. I mean, my background's Buddhist. It's kind of like living in that moment. Don't don't look back to your past, or you become depressed. Look forward too far, and what happens? You
Where you
become
going
more
to rest?
anxious, right? So finding that medium is really tricky, and I think that's the biggest lesson. Absolutely, Doug, like I totally agree that don't go off thinking you're worried and then jumping off and becoming a software engineer. You know what I'm saying? Which is what I did, but I had my reasons about it. But you just got to make sure you're ready to adapt and learn. And I think mental resilience is another big part of um, what you need now to, I think, succeed as a physio as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
You got an example there that's springing to mind?
We've got a lot more competition now as well,
Yep.
within the profession and externally, interprofessional. Um, Things are moving a lot faster, and you can't rest on your laurels. As I said, you need to keep learning, not just clinically, but non-clinically, to stay ahead and stay differentiated.
Yeah.
Um, and that could be, as we talked about earlier, adopting new tools like AI tools for your practice to make your
Yeah.
life easier.
It can streamline your efficiency so you can work again to your strengths of being a clinician and giving good clinical
Getting better.
decisions.
Yep.
For
Getting
200
better.
bucks, sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, just getting better outcomes for patients as well. Just reducing your cognitive load.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I mean, I can think of lots of ways. I think, as you say, as soon as something is repetitive, can you get rid of it? Because that's not really helping what you do as far as that one-on-one, face-to-face contact with your patient.
most likely if it's repetitive, it can probably be coded, right?
Yeah, so we'll have to go off and become software engineers. That's the
I know.
problem.
Right.
Next sort of question, general thing, like 200 bucks or less, what is the best book or app or tool or investment that you've made in your self development?
So I think reading a biography, Steve Jobs, Walter Isaacson, I think that's his name, was really inspirational. Um, Even if you don't want to become an entrepreneur, it's a good read because his life story is quite amazing and what he's done. There's another book I've read called Mastery by Robert Greene. So that he studies people's career courses, right? Like people who probably listen to this podcast about how people get mastery. That's a really important read, interesting read too.
Okay.
How the top achievers in any field end up getting there.
Yeah.
Um, the last book I've read that's very interesting, probably useful as a physio is probably How to Influence Friends and People, but by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
It's
That's an old classic.
classic that helps with the
Yeah, the
Um,
psychology of relationships in a way.
so those three, and there's many more, but probably those three. If we
Okay.
had two parts left,
Thank you. I didn't know the first two. What would you say has been your most out on a limb decision that you've made in regards to your dual career? And I guess what was the outcome of that decision?
I'm literally becoming a software engineer, like
Yeah,
going.
I was worried about
That's a big
that.
one by anyone's stats. And
Yeah.
being, as you said, mentored by people 10, 15 years younger than you, earning three times as much as you, right?
Well, that's an interesting concept because in physio,
Okay.
it's usually the other way around, isn't it?
I know, just I mean, so it's totally flipped my world in that sense. But yeah, um, that's the
Yeah.
answer.
Why is that? Like, I mean, physio, it's like someone's got clinical experience, they've been challenged, they've thought about things, they've got a process together. Software engineering, is that just because they started younger and so they're in
Um,
their early 20s and they're just very proficient?
because the field, I feel, this is just my opinion, but because the technologies move so fast, um, so you've got two types of intelligence in general, which is fluid and um, so you have crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is when, you learn through experience and you make connections. But with software, it's heavily involved in fluid, and that seems to drop as you get older.
So what's
Your
the fluid
ability,
intelligence? Like I've got absolutely none of that, obviously. So how would
like
you
solving puzzles really
okay,
quickly, like taking new information
and
on the
absorbing
fly,
it?
problem solving as a result of that. Not saying I mean, we do that as a physio too, but it becomes a bit more crystallized over time. If
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Where you
if the
become more
process is the same.
patterned.
Well, the reason why these guys I think get paid a lot is their knowledge base and that fluidity,
Yeah.
which is why they're often younger. Does make sense because it's not so much to do with your EQ, it's more to do with how fast you solve problems and you get paid more for solving more complicated problems.
Yeah. Quicker. Yeah.
Hope that answers your question there. Yeah.
And then when they get their sore neck pain, they have to go and see a crystallized intelligence person.
Yeah, they have to respect crystallized intelligence physics.
I love the word crystallized. I can sort of see it. It's a better word than fossilized intelligence.
Yeah, anyway, but it's very interesting. I think I can't remember. I've read so many books now, I can't even remember their names now, but yeah, there's that there's different types of intelligence, and I had to learn all these things as I moved, become
Yeah,
junior, right?
yeah, from the
Whether if
juniors.
it's even possible, you know what I'm saying? What techniques do I need to use? But yeah, anyway, that's
Yeah. If you could step back to your younger self, apart from saying become a professional software engineer like sooner, what advice would you like to share with yourself that knowing what you know now?
I probably wouldn't follow the school system strictly.
Yeah,
I'd, I'd hope I have a school or parents which support my interests really early on, because a lot of these things you can master without being, 40-year-old, for example.
yeah,
And I think if you can actually add those skills up and compound them early on, I do feel like you'll be at least in better stead once you hit uni, if you want to
yeah.
go to uni, if that makes sense. So
You
starting
kind
it,
of have to know what you're going to want to do, though, don't you? That's you almost,
you do. And I think some kids are more privileged to to have more opportunities to them early on. But I think it's important that yeah, you have a very enriched learning environment early on where you can dabble and play around with things
yeah,
without thinking I need to get good marks. Do you know what I'm saying? And passing
yeah.
it or have a
Well, it's
good
almost that fluid and crystallized intelligence, isn't it? The fluid is just
yeah, it is. It is.
try this, try that, do
Yeah,
this, do
try this,
that.
and then you build your bank, and then you make connections, and
Yeah, yeah,
you become a specialist physio, right?
yeah. That's so true. Hey,
And
looking forward, where do you see the physio profession going, or where would you like to see it go? Because you've still got your foot in that camp.
yeah, I'd like to see more leaders in our area at political level, um, an influential level. Um, I think we've got a few entrepreneurial ones, but I'd like to see more people representing us from various different fields, which can have a indirect and direct impact on our profession, in particularly, tech, entrepreneurship, leadership, and actually put us on the map as separated from a medical profession to stand on our own feet. I think we're slowly getting there, but then it's not quite there yet in many ways. But just knowing that, you have a specialty program now, it's great to see, not back in my time. But I
Yeah.
think even more people like yourself leading the way in that, creating podcasts and being a great example to others and inspire others moving forward in all different areas. So we become our own ecosystem.
So
Um,
when you say politically, do you sort of see it's somebody that is a physio that then has gone into politics, or is that too
we're not that
logical?
political, more like kind of social clout. I
Yeah.
mean, like someone, I'm going to generically call it like a who's who in society. Doesn't make sense. Like political clout, social clout, professional clout, interdisciplinary clout.
Yeah, just I guess more physios standing up and being a bit more vocal about the positives of the profession.
Yeah, I think I used the wrong word, political, but that's one example. But as
Yeah.
you can see, like just people representing at that level that make a bigger influence on the
Yeah.
profession.
So
And
more I guess more in the spotlight, so to speak, or
yeah,
becoming more, yeah, building the awareness around, because it's a great profession, like, and it gives so many opportunities. And I think even though we've had primary contact practitioner status since probably I think it's the mid to late 70s. Now we're coming up to, a long time that we've had patients come to us. And I know even when I was going through, it was like, oh, you can't say to your patients, come to me directly, you got to go and see your GP first. We've been so in the closet, so to speak, about all these great skills and how we can help people that really has been to our own detriment. I think as a profession, we do need to speak up a lot more and say, no, come to us. We are the exercise, or we are the clinical reasoning, or we can guide you through that process, as good as, if not better than anyone else. We
yeah,
need to say it more.
absolutely. We need to band together and have that courage as a group to do that. And I think hopefully, if I succeed in this, I'll be one of those people, that can help um, voice these benefits of physio and the value it can bring to the
Yeah.
world. So I think it's a work in progress, but hopefully people don't leave before 10 plus years.
Well,
Which
that's the
is
idea. If you you give them that rainbow to shoot for, the
yeah.
options, then it's
But
more likely they'll go for it. And that's what you're saying. Like, if we are losing a percentage of our cohort before 10 years because they don't see opportunities, they don't see the variability, the things that they can pursue, because they're just locked into that. Got to see, 6 to 6 patients every half hour, da da da. Well, it's not going to be a successful profession.
absolutely not. Yeah,
We need to
so
give them that sort of variety.
I really
How are
like
you
it.
looking? Where are you going for the next few years? What are you focusing in on, Barry?
Probably continue to practice as a physio, reduced hours, build my business, and hopefully help mentor other physios get into this field
Yeah.
because it won't be just me. Yeah, I think I want to see more entrepreneurs in this space hacking things together,
Yeah.
um, coding things, building even physical things, right? And I just want to see this blow up a bit in Australia, given that we've got such a strong expertise in physio, right, and research. And I hope
Yeah,
to
we've got those for
leading.
sure.
Yeah, I hope to see us leading in that and knowing that there's, job satisfaction and, financial reward and the rest of it from it if they find the right mentors. And
And I mean, you're putting yourself out there. Is there a process that you've got structured for people that are perhaps interested?
no, generally not, but I think I get a good feel for them. Like when I have a coffee or something like that, or it can just, I think it's important that they start promoting themselves on LinkedIn and just reaching out.
Yeah.
We're a
Cool.
smaller profession. No one's going to kick you back, right? Not talking to you. So yeah, I'm always happy to talk and help the younger ones and the next generation be leaders in our profession because yeah, sometimes it does, stop me from sleeping at night. Like literally thinking that we've got so much potential, but people drop off right before the 10 years. And I'd like to see it, ticking the boxes for what a career and personal growth journey should be
Yeah.
for.
Well, anyone listening now and into the future, if you're interested in ticking that box of merging your health IT together, look up Barry on LinkedIn and hit him up with your proposal on a coffee. And if you pay for your coffee, he's obviously on for it. Hey,
Thanks.
look, Barry, thanks heaps for that. Like it's an area, IT, it's always been part of our profession, but it's never been a big part of it. And it's definitely, as you say, the task repetition, the care plans, the letter writing, that stuff is building and building, and it's taking away our clinical time. And I guess we don't want to go the teacher's direction, which is average teacher says they spend about 40% teaching and about 60% marking and planning and admin. And it's not, we're a frontline profession. We're a face-to-face profession. So IT and those things can always help us be a better clinician, and we don't want it taking away from that valuable clinical time. So thanks heap for your insights and also hearing about your journey. And it's been a real buzz to have you on Physio Plus 10. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Physio Plus 10, in which I trust you gained some valuable insights. It'd be awesome if you could leave your 2 cents worth as a review or rating of this podcast, and I look forward to sharing the story of another trailblazing physiotherapist with you in 2 weeks' time. Stay safe. Bye for now.